is Big Ronnie, and you are listening to Without Your Head, the only place to be.
Welcome to the Station of Decapitation Without Your Head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by Jim Hosking, the co-writer and director of The Greasy Strangler, a movie that I absolutely loved. And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Neal. Thank you.
Yeah. So where did the idea for The Greasy Strangler originate?
Well, I think that the sort of original intention was to just write something that was just a really sort of cathartic kind of two fingers or one finger to everything in the whole world. And so I was writing some scripts with my friend Toby, and I think that we had been trying to write really serious films, and showing them to our agent and not really getting anywhere. And then we just decided to just do something. I mean, not that anything that we'd done was at all conventional, but we just decided to do something really just to make each other laugh. And I think that there's a guy who's in the film who I think you've spoken to. You said called Carl Solomon, who I kind of had a slight fascination for, and so does Toby, who wrote The Strangler with me. And I emailed Toby and just said we should write a script for Carl. And I think Toby replied he could be a greasy strangler, and then I just replied the greasy strangler, and then I think within about half an hour we'd kind of emailed each other quite a lot of stuff that ended up being, the sort of like the backbone of the film, and just about his sort of cooking obsessions, how he strangles people, what happens to them, like going to the horror house to sort of watch films with his son, and putting loads of grease on his popcorn. And I mean, it's just all this stuff. It kind of just came out very quickly. But I would just say that whenever I'm writing anything, it's not there's no great sort of strategy or end goal. It's just more like a sort of I was going to say a sort of way of pleasuring myself, but that sounds disgusting. But it's really just to keep my interest going. And so I get a bit bored and a bit sort of frustrated with sort of predictable films, and just, I don't know, sort of obviously derivative films or filmmakers whose work I can see like how they got there or why they got there. And so this was just quite different. But also, we had showed it to my agent who said, I can't show this to anyone. It's too depraved and disgusting. And luckily I showed it to one of my producers, Andy Stark, who is also Ben Wheatley's producer. And I think that Andy read it and just loved it and said, oh, we should make this. And he had already read about 5 of my other scripts that he seemed to like. But this one that I just thought nobody was going to get behind it, suddenly a load of people got behind it. And so, okay. Anyway, that's a very long answer.
No, it's great though. But so, how did Carl not become the Greasy Strangler? How did Michael St. Michael's become the Greasy Strangler?
Well, it certainly wasn't for want of trying on Carl's part or on my part. I think I probably had Carl read about 10 times as Ronnie, and it's just one of those things where I knew that I wanted Skye to be Braden, and I just, not to do Carl a disservice. I mean, I think he's so interesting and watchable and funny, but it was just working on such a kind of deadpan, peculiar level that I just wasn't sure that it was going to hold people's interest for a whole film. And I had seen St. Michael's in a casting that I was doing for this film I've just shot, actually, and he came in and read for that film, and I just found him really, I loved his look. I found him really interesting. Like he just made me laugh a lot, and just seemed to not be trying hard to impress me or to sort of get the part. He was just kind of, again, just doing what occurred naturally to him, and he just lodged in my head. And then I think that when I was thinking of who could play Ronnie to to Skye's Braden, it just suddenly clicked that Michael would be the right choice, and they both had this kind of quite sort of sweet, innocent, sort of childlike quality, which was something that I really wanted with the film. I kind of wanted the film to be quite sort of lovable and innocent, and rather like it's kind of almost like a sort of a cartoon or a kids film, but just where the subject matter's just gone wrong, you know. And so yeah, I just didn't feel like it was going to work with Carl and Skye, really.
Yeah. You mentioned have like the childlike quality, and there's all this crazy stuff, but you actually really do feel bad for Braden in a lot of the scenes because he's so innocent and everything, and there's like emotion in the movie besides all the madness that's going on.
Well, I think maybe in a way. I mean, I can't say that I feel particularly sorry for Braden. I mean, like if anybody does, that's really nice and really sweet. But I suppose just because to me the film is kind of, I mean, there's definite sort of poignancy in it and sadness and sweetness, but also just the way that the characters can switch from feeling very sad to then just the next minute like just laughing about something, or they can just move on very quickly from one emotion to another. It's kind of like children. Like I think in my head, and also in Toby's head when we wrote the script, it was rather like and both of us are parents. It was rather like thinking of our children when kids are young and they can get so upset and really angry, and then they maybe they even sort of run into a table and sort of hurt their legs, and they start really crying, but then they see something interesting happening over there, and even while tears are running down their face, they're suddenly sort of excited and giggling and running over here and running over there, and I sort of felt like that was what I get out of Skye when he's being Braden in the film, is that there is a sort of sadness to it. And, obviously, say in the Hootie Tootie scene, and he gets very upset. But then the next minute, he's kind of going downstairs to the kitchen and sort of trying to flirt with Janet and telling her about his books that he's writing. And I don't know. I mean, I just find him funny, I suppose. I think that all of them are kind of really quite selfish, self-centered, sort of. I mean, Braden's manipulative, but they're just completely into their own shit.
Mm-hmm. No,
I mean, Janet is completely manipulative.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when I talked to her, Elizabeth, she said that she turned down the movie 3 times before she took the part. What was it about her that made you want her to be Janet?
Okay, well, so first of all, I didn't know that she'd turned the film down 3 times.
Oh, okay.
That's news. I'm
sorry to break the news.
I don't feel like I offered it to her 4 times, so that's but yeah, it's quite a difficult role to cast for Janet, because I didn't want Janet to be I didn't want her to be like a sort of cliche of a highly sexed, manipulative female sort of character. I didn't want her to be obviously sexy or sort of how would I say it? It's like I wanted her to be able to be sexual and to be, like sort of quite manipulative and provocative, but without being dislikable. And it was important to me that she was kind of fitted in the same world as Ronnie and Braden, that there was also like a sort of like a lack of guile and innocence to her, and like that sort of childlike quality. Like when I was thinking about Janet at the beginning, and the kind of images that I was finding. Like I put loads and loads of images together to sort of share with the production designer and with the costume designer and with the director of photography and like I was finding old illustrations by Crumb and then old sort of amateur. I suppose they're kind of called readers' wives pictures or something in the UK, but like the kind of things that used to be in sort of pornographic magazines in the 70s and 80s, where people would send in photographs of their girlfriend or their wife sort of trying to look sort of sexy lying down on a sort of, you know, pretty filthy bed in some bedroom, like wearing strange clothes. And I don't know, like I kind of wanted it to be sexual and fun, and it was really important to me that Janet was funny and not just highly sexed, and you know, like you have to sort of like her and find her funny, but also accept her as this kind of quite sweet sort of character. I don't know, I'm probably not expressing myself very well, but all I can say is that out of everybody that I saw, Liz was the only candidate who I thought would be right for this. She just made it seem fun and funny without it being excruciating or embarrassing. You know, like some of the dialogue that was in the original script, which I did film, because when I first started editing the film, it was about 2.25 hours long, and there was loads of dialogue between Janet and Braden. I mean, there's probably 2 scenes that were both about 10 minutes long, where she was talking in in-depth detail about trying to go to bed with the Indian man at the motel and how he couldn't get it up and whatever else, and that she had sent him out to the vending machine to get some Paprika Ridge chips because she was hungry and because he couldn't have sex with her. And it was really, really really sort of protracted, convoluted dialogue, and that was the dialogue that I was doing in the castings, and it was only working with Liz. It was only funny with her, whereas with other people it just sort of felt like it was a film. I mean, maybe this is how other people feel, but it felt like this is a film made by complete maniac.
Is there a science to repetition? Because I think the repetition in the movie, first it's funny, then like you get annoyed by it, and then it keeps going, so then it's funny again.
Well, I mean, there's definitely no science to anything that I'm doing. I mean, it's all I would say is I just go with my instinct of what I find funny, and I think that it just so happens that Toby, who wrote the script with me, and Toby and I both find repetition, and certainly in this script in particular, we've just both found it really funny. And I mean, I don't like. Yeah, some people have said, "Oh, it starts funny, then it gets boring, or it gets annoying, and then it gets funny again." Well, I mean, to me, it's funny. I mean, I actually do find it funny the whole time. But
all right.
But that's because I like stuff that's kind of pointless in a way. I like the fact that some things are made with no agenda other than the sort of pure desire to sort of have fun. And you see a lot of comedies or a lot of films where the comedy does feel like it's very scientific or very calculated, and this I wanted this to feel like when I was showing the edit to my producers or when the film was finished up, I liked the feeling that people were watching it and not really knowing quite what to think about it. And then I thought, okay, I've done what I've set out to do. It's like I wanted the scene, for example, with the Paprika Ridge chips with the Indian guy, and I wanted that to be a hell of a lot longer than that, but I just used everything I had, and there was nothing left in the dailies. That was everything. And actually at one stage, I mean, I kept making it longer, and I remember Toby, who wrote the script with me, and Mark, who's the editor, were both saying to me, honestly, man, you've got to lose about 5 of those exchanges. It just goes on too long. You can't have it going on like that. And I was saying, no, honestly, it's got to go on. It should go on much longer than this. I'm really annoyed that I haven't got any more stuff. It's just, if it had gone on and on, I mean, that's what life is is like, you know. And I think that people don't often see that in films. But if you think about the conversations that you often have with people, or maybe this is just me, I have some phenomenally fucking boring, repetitive conversations with people. You know, so with my family and with certain friends of mine, where it's just back and forth, boring fucking bullshit. And this is what this stuff is, and this is true, and it's real, and it's like, you know, when you think about a father and a son living together and getting on each other's nerves and not having any other friends apart from some idiot with a cardboard pig nose. I mean, it's like, you know, they're going to just have these boring, bloody conversations because they're not intellectuals. They don't watch, you know, amazing 4-hour-long Greek art house films and read, you know, philosophy books. They just sit there and talk shit to each other.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I was going to say, I love the cinematography of the movie, and how hands-on are you for stuff like that? And in particular, I really like the reveal shots of Ronnie, where like it'll be Janet and Braden will be talking, and then the camera will pan up, and he was like standing over him, or when it pans out and he's in the room. Yeah, no, I mean all that is stuff that's that we really think about, and I've shot a lot with Morten, who is the DP on this film. So Morten Tedden, he's a Swedish guy with long ginger hair and cowboy boots and bell bottoms, and lives in Los Angeles. But I think that he just has a similar feeling to me, that we like a lot of shots where the camera will sort of move in a certain way and will maybe reveal certain things. And so actually in the scene where Braden's talking to Janet in the kitchen, and then the camera, it sort of slowly dollies back, and I have got some edits in the film there, but it did also work as just one shot dollying back to reveal Ronnie in the doorway. I mean, that's just stuff that I like. I like watching something and then you realizing during it that actually something else is going on there. But it's also just, there's something funny within this film. I think that there's people listening in on other people's kind of quite boring conversations, you know. So like when Janet is in the garden with Braden and he's sort of saying to her, my dad just said, he said, my dad said he watched you go pee or whatever else. And, you know, and then the camera tilts up and then reveals that the dad is apparently naked listening to this story, looking thunderously angry. And there's just something about the smallness of their lives and the claustrophobia of everything, that's all part of the repetition and the kind of smallness of stuff, which I just found really fun and funny. So I liked that revealing of, you know, of say Ronnie in shots, and just so much as I liked the fact that I was trying to keep the streets as deserted as possible. I just didn't want anyone to be around. I didn't want any cars to be around, but we couldn't control everything. It was a bit annoying, but I wanted it to be like the only people that existed in this place were Ronnie, Braden, Janet, and the poor fuckers who took the disco to. And from what I understand, there was a lot of walkouts on the first Sundance screening. So what was that like for you to be in the audience that people were walking out?
Yeah, I don't know how many walkouts there were. It sort of felt like, I mean, there was something quite hellish about that night in that I don't know, it was the first screening of my first film. I turned up, and then on the sort of like that little red carpet bit where you have your photo taken, suddenly about 5 of my producers had put on costumes from the film, and so they were all dressed like characters from the film, which was a bit of a surprise to me. It was sort of making me feel slightly anxious, because I was thinking, I don't really know that I want everyone to know what these costumes look like. So I was already feeling kind of rattled. Then I went into the cinema and I introduced the film, and then I tried to find a seat, and all the seats where my cast were, and my crew and my producer and everything, they were all taken. So I had to go and sit on my own to the side. And then it felt like everybody who walked out, and I would say there's probably only about 10 people who did. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but it felt like they were all sat literally in the seats around me. So it felt like it was a very sort of strategic move from a few of them to really kind of put the pressure on me. But I don't know. I don't know that I really cared that much. I felt like the first 15 minutes of watching the film were really quite tough because I was sort of worried about how it was being received, and I could feel all four of my limbs were kind of like shaking a bit, and I was just thinking, God, this is really, really nightmarish. And then after about 20 minutes, I just thought, actually, there's nothing I can do about this now. It's out there, and then I just started really enjoying the fact that it seemed to be making people uncomfortable, that there were like sort of long periods of silence in the audience. Then people would start laughing, and I could tell that people didn't really know what to think of it. And then I started really enjoying myself, and I think I was probably laughing more than anyone else in there. I don't know, I have no idea, but
yeah. The music is just perfect. How did you find the music, or did it come to you? How did you settle upon it?
Well, I approached Andy, who made the music. Andy Hung, who's in a band called Fuck Buttons in the UK. Or when I say a band, they're just they're a duo. And I just heard some of his solo stuff that I was trying to picture. So when I was editing the film, I would use a couple of Andy's tracks, and they just worked really perfectly for the mood of it being like a sort of almost like a demented cartoon / sort of video game kind of thing. And so I just got in touch with him and showed him the film. I think the film kind of freaked him out quite a lot. Then I talked to him about it and told him the kind of feeling I wanted from the music. And then in a very short space of time, he started putting these ideas together. And I think the first one that I heard was the sort of theme tune, really, like the first tune that starts up in the film when the title of the film comes up. And it was just a very simple little loop that he had done, and I just thought it was absolutely great. And I remember hearing it and just laughing and just thinking, wow, this is perfect. And I told him, and he said, I didn't really like that one, Jim. I thought it wasn't very good, but I put it down anyway, you know. And he just completely understood the tone I was going for. But I think also just that our characters probably have quite a lot in common in that we're probably quite sort of gentle, sensitive people, and at the same time sort of twisted weirdos who don't understand why we have the desire to make the stuff we make or whatever.
Now, it's been said that the potato chip scene is based on something that really happened to you. Is there anything else, little tidbits in the movie that's based on any experiences you've had? Maybe, I hope not like the masturbation or sex scene, but.
Well, no, I've never masturbated.
Right.
Let me think. The potato scene, that's true. I'm trying to think about anything else that's really happened to me. Gosh, I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of anything else that I've actually, directly kind of taken, but I would say that there are certain things in it that feel like they're kind of sort of inspired a little bit by vague childhood memories of, I don't know, just sort of hanging around at home and with my family and sort of just people generally kind of being naked at home, sharing the bathroom. And I don't know, like I remember my dad would sort of, I mean, my parents weren't together, but I'd go and stay with my dad, and sometimes I'd look down the corridor and I'd see him in the bathroom brushing his teeth, having a piss at the same time, and completely naked, and thinking that was totally normal. And actually, I remember when I was editing The Strangler, and Mark, who cut the film, was really laughing about the shot where Janet's going for a pee, and you're looking through Ronnie's legs, and you can see the tip of his dong sort of sticking to the frame. And he was like, Mark's Australian, and he was like, dude, this is really weird, man. And I was looking at it and thinking, I don't know, it looks totally normal to me. This is what I remember my family being like. And I thought, actually, maybe I just am not a very good judge of what's appropriate or whatever.
And plus, your father must have been very well endowed. If it was,
He had very low slung ball.
yeah, I was gonna say that actually reminds me of my grandfather, but it was more of a yeah.
Well, my dad was 73 when I was born.
Oh wow, yeah, and awesome. Oddly enough, I didn't know this. I actually watched the movie with my mom, and she said that her father, my grandfather, used to say bullshit artist all the time.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and I'd actually never really heard that phrase before. Skye?
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's interesting. Yeah, I sort of. It was a phrase that we always used as kids here in England, and I don't know. I didn't know whether it existed or not in the US, but I guess because people have been calling Trump a bullshit artist, haven't they? I don't know. I don't think that's anything to do with this film, but if it is, I don't know. But I just presumed that it did exist in the States as well, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Skye said that he said it a lot in Pennsylvania, and my grandfather was from Pennsylvania, so maybe that's the connection.
Oh, okay, so maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it's a Pennsylvania thing.
Yeah. You know why does Oinker have a pig nose? Besides his name being Oinker, I guess he'd have to have a pig nose.
Well, I can tell you, it's not a particularly fascinating story, but it'll show the way that our minds work. I think, and that I was making some sort of quite strange. I make commercials once in a while. I don't do them very often because the ones that I do sort of tend to be a little bit odd and freak the client out or whatever. But I was doing some in Australia, and this guy came into the casting who made me laugh so much that I sent Toby, this was before we had written The Greasy Strangler actually, this was probably like 4 years ago, and I sent Toby a clip of this guy, and we started calling him the pig chuckler because he kind of looked a bit like a pig and chuckled the whole time. And so when we came up with the Oinker character, I think we both just thought, oh, he should be that Australian guy from that casting. I should try and cast him, that guy that I saw 4 years ago. And then I think just because that guy had a face that was like a pig, we decided to call him Oinker and give him a pig's nose. And actually, the commercial that I was doing in Australia at the time was all about renting things, and so that's why I ended up putting in that line about Oinker saying that he was renting his shoes. It was a bit of a bit of an in joke to myself, but yeah. So there was no great logic behind it.
Yeah. By the way, when the scene about going to the horror house, I can relate to because many times I'll tell people I'm going to a horror convention, and they think I'm talking about something totally different.
Yeah,
yeah. I know you're a shady guy, but I didn't know you were quite like that. But
well, I found that a little frustrating because I didn't realise that when Americans said horror, that it ended up sounding like whore. And so when we were shooting it, I was saying to all of them, "Could you try and say it more like horror?" And none of them could say it any other way than horror like that. So I just thought, oh fucking hell, man, this doesn't work at all. But actually, people seem quite funny that it was like they're all going to the whorehouse and then they're going to the horror house.
Yeah, it totally worked. And I heard there's a 2-hour version coming out.
No, I don't think that's true. Oh. There is I've got a 2-hour, 15-minute edit of it, but I don't think it's going to come out. But I know there's a new Australian DVD. I don't know if there's any deleted scenes on it or not. Maybe there are on the American one. I've no idea. But I don't think. I mean, I'd be quite happy to put it out, but it would probably cost about $5,000 or something to colour the picture and to mix it and do whatever else. So I don't know. Unless there's some amazing benefactor who wants to give me some money, and then I can put out the definitive version of this film that will really drive absolutely everybody apocalyptically crazy. Yeah.
What was there any particular scenes that you had to like really fight to keep in? I know you mentioned a couple already, but
I didn't have to fight to keep any in because I had Final Cut, but I had probably 7 or 8 producers, and I probably had about 5 of them, and I don't think any of them would mind me saying it. I probably had about 5 of them who desperately didn't like the the hot dog salesman who keeps going on about how he could lose his license. They also, who is now, that guy's actually passed away now. So.
Yeah, I heard about that. It's too bad.
And I know that a couple of my producers hated the Jodie character. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there were things, I didn't have to fight to keep anything in, but I definitely had to disregard a lot of, counsel that I had. And actually, I do look back and I feel like I maybe crapped out a little bit with a couple of things. Like there was, with the sex scene between Janet and Braden, the first one where he's saying, I don't know if I'm doing it right, Janet. I mean, that scene was originally about 4 times longer with like loads more stuff in it. And it was, and at the time, the thing is that when I first watched the cut back and, you put all these scenes together individually and you think, oh, this is working really well, I'm so excited or whatever, but you don't see it as one big sequence and you don't get that cumulative effect, which can be, astonishingly unnerving and jarring. And when I first saw it back, I ended up, within about half an hour, I had my head in my hands, just feeling like, what the hell have I done? I can't show this to anybody. This is completely demented. It's like it's been made by someone with terrible mental problems. Honestly, it was like, what is wrong with me that I've had to make this film that's just like so obsessed with sex and cocks and like shagging and wanking and I was just thinking like that, this is just completely fucked up and I can't show this to anyone, but I've told everybody that I'm making a film, so what am I going to do? And anyway, so I kind of ended up trimming quite a bit of the sexual stuff out. So it's funny to me that when people say, oh, Liz's performance is so brave, or Michael's performance is so brave, or the film's so disturbing, or whatever, it's like, well, A, the film's not disturbing unless you're really fucking sheltered and boring. But also, it's like, it's so tame compared to where it was at one stage. But I think it works in a tighter fashion now. I think there's only so much of this kind of thing that I think you can take before your brain feels like it's sort of spasming in a bad way. And I think I managed to stretch it to the point where you probably couldn't take much more. And so I think that it was good to cut some stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. What is it about Skye Elobar that you like so much in your work?
That's an interesting question. Well, I find him. I don't know. I think there's a sort of a mixture of. Maybe I can't quite work him out. Is one thing that I like. I like the fact that I don't know. I can meet certain Americans and I have no context for them. When I meet British people, I can pretty quickly understand, where they're from or what kind of effect they're sort of intending, like if they're contrived or if they're genuine or whatever. But I can meet someone like Skye and I just don't know if he's normal for where he's from or if he's eccentric or if he's, whatever. But I also like his ability to play sort of peculiar. He can play peculiar dialogue or situations in a very sincere, straight way, and that's just something that really appeals to me. And he just makes me laugh, and I like him a lot. I don't know. I think I like people who don't quite fit into any sort of categorizable box, and that's where I feel comfortable. And I suppose I always felt comfortable around Skye and around like some other people who I cast who just feel like they're individuals, and I just feel like I understand them. Maybe I feel like I understand them or something better than I do people who seem more normal or straightforward or I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's just. I mean, I've had like journalists saying to me after meeting me, like, "Oh, you're the last person that I would have expected to make the Greasy Strangler." But then I think, well, there's obviously a big gap between, how I feel on the inside and how I may present myself on the outside or whatever. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. How do you go about choosing the wardrobes?
Well, you mean like where did the ideas come from, or?
Yeah, because there's very peculiar dress throughout the movie.
Yeah, well, I never wanted it to be like the real world or like the contemporary world or anything. I wanted it to be its own little universe. And Christina Blackadder, who did the costumes, I've worked with her a lot, and I think we both probably derive a lot of pleasure from similar kinds of sort of colours and fabrics, and I'm probably very inspired by clothes from different, like, other sort of countries and other places, and I just wanted it to feel like the way that they all dressed, you felt like they couldn't really be a part of the world at large. They couldn't really know many other people. They couldn't be socially acceptable or accepted. It just had to sort of communicate a lot instantly. And so with the clothes that they were wearing for the disco tour, I mean, you think of disco music, and I sort of wanted it to have a kind of a vibrancy to it, or a vivid, optimistic color, but I also wanted it to be to sort of feel slightly wrong and to feel a little bit uncomfortable, maybe, for some people. So the sleeves being slightly the wrong length, of the sweaters have got the sort of horrible necks on them. The shorts are made of soft, kind of almost, I don't know, like, it's kind of almost like knitted, almost slightly athletic, but not really. It's like the kind of stuff that maybe, your grandfather might have been looking for in a thrift store in some, godforsaken town in 1972. I mean, I don't know. It's a very instinctive thing. So I'll just, for example, with Ronnie's disco costume, I had spoken to Christina about it maybe being a jumpsuit, like a totally transparent jumpsuit. So, when you think of like Barbarella, and she's got those panels in her clothes where you can see her boobs or whatever. But I wanted him to wear this totally transparent thing. But then we gradually decided that it would be nice if he did have a jumpsuit, but with a kind of mesh window in it that was, and I think so I said, like, it could be like a diamond thing, and it's a very precise shape, and then it had like a sort of gold mesh panel over, so you could see into it, but it was sort of detailed, and I don't know, just something that felt kind of special and quite beautiful and quite exotic, but also it's quite base and peculiar.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't really strategize much. I just go with a feeling.
Mm-hmm. I also like because you mentioned about being like its own little world, the fake money, because especially they use it twice. Because I think in the first scene you might think he's just giving Big Paul like fake money because he's blind. He's not going to tell the difference. But then he has it again for the hot dog vendor.
Yeah, and then you realize he's just a bastard.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's I think that's just an example of any little detail that you're thinking of, you just sort of think, well, is there a more interesting way of doing this? Is there something that just feels a bit funnier, you know? And it's like, it definitely came from the fact that he was cheating Paul, yeah. But but then I sort of extended it to when he was paying for the hot dogs, but also when he was paying Paul, it suddenly. It's one of those things that when you're filming, you suddenly realise things that are like, oh shit, where's he going to have the money? Because he's just come through the car wash. He can't have it in his hand because it would have got really wet and whatever else. And so then, then it occurred to me, I think he has to park it up his bum cheeks. That's the only place that he could have it. So there's just stuff that happens,
Yeah. And the very ending, I don't spoil the movie, but I think it kind of leaves it up for interpretation, I think, for whoever's watching it.
Yeah.
Was that what you were going for? Because it's the end is the whole movie's weird, but the end specifically is very out there.
Was I going for what, to totally confuse people,
or just to leave it up to people's imagination or interpretation of what the ending means?
Well, I mean, that's what I wanted the whole film to be like, really. But with the ending, yeah, I mean, actually, there's a very specific logic to it. To me, I wouldn't have written it otherwise. But I certainly didn't feel any need for it to be spelt out any more than it is. I mean, I think you just watch something and then you can have your own interpretation for sure. And I've been asked a number of times at Q&As or whatever about it, and I don't know. I mean, I don't go and watch someone else's film and then want the filmmaker to explain. I don't want David Lynch to explain to me what Mulholland Drive's about. I just want to feel something and then it take me somewhere. In the same way that when I listen to any number of my favourite songs, I'm not expecting the lyrics to tell a linear story. It's more like the words can sound a certain way and make me feel a certain thing, and that's just what I like.
Mm-hmm. I do too. Actually, that's what I like about it. It's not it's not spelling it out for you. It's you watch and you take whatever you want from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what's the reception been like? Because for me, I've been talking about the movie a lot on the show, and I get one of two things: either people love it like I do, or they just like, or what is wrong with you? I can watch this movie. No one's like, it's okay, or it's it's either love or just total hatred.
Well, I think that what it seems to me is that I think there are people who like stuff existing in life that feels new, or new might be the wrong word. I'm not really thinking it through. But what I mean is, like, some people like when something comes along and they didn't see it coming and it feels different and it makes them think in a different way, and then they can find that exciting. And then other people, when something comes along and they don't understand it or they don't know why it exists, and then they just feel annoyed by it, and that's probably their own frustrations with themselves or their lives or their upbringing or whatever. I don't know. I mean, all I can think is that I like seeing stuff and feeling like, oh fuck, I didn't see that coming. That feels different. That feels interesting. Or I wonder what he's meaning with that. Like, like I love. There's like a Thai filmmaker who made that film Uncle Boomy. I can't remember the full title, but his last film was Cemetery of Splendor. But Uncle Boomy, I thought, was just a really brilliant film, and like you can watch something that's very dreamlike and have your own interpretation of it. And I mean, I don't know. It's like some people were probably really angered by punk rock coming along, and then other people thought it was really great. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying this is punk, but I'm just saying it's like,
it's very original.
Well, I mean, it clearly doesn't really. It's not looking for you to like it. I mean, it's not like I didn't make the film thinking that I had any idea how people would react to it. I made it because I knew that I would enjoy seeing it, and that's all. And that's all I tried to do.
Mm-hmm. And my friend and co-host on the show, Annabelle Lecter, who can't be here right now. But she said we watched it together recently, and she said that it's going to be our new test for people. If they don't like the Greasy Strangler, we just can't be friends with them. And
that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I sometimes feel like that about certain things. Like, you know, if you hear that somebody likes Coldplay, then you think you can't speak to them.
Right, exactly. So, what do you have coming out next? What are you working on now?
Well, I just shot another film, and I'm editing that right now. And then after that, I'm doing a little TV pilot thing in the US, which I wrote with Toby, who I wrote The Strangler with, and that's going to be a pretty crazy thing, I think, pretty odd. I don't know, yeah, doing different things. I'm sort of loath to say too much about them because I keep it mysterious.
There you go. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And honestly, after I watched Greasy Strangler, I went and watched all your shorts and some of your commercials because I love the movie so much. And yeah, your stuff follows a similar, vibe, sense of humor, and all very, quirky and stuff. And I really love your work.
Oh, thanks, Neal. I mean, I think there is something. There's a through line probably in the stuff I do, and I don't know quite what it is, other than the stuff I do tends to end up feeling like only I could have made it, and I don't know what that is. Whether it's it's all the little choices, I suppose. But I mean, there's definitely a certain kind of thing that I find funny, but I don't analyze it too much for fear of, I don't know, losing my way a bit. But
yeah. Well, I really appreciate you talking to me today, and I know it's longer than the 15 minutes we agreed on.
Oh no! It's fine. It's fine. That was an arbitrary
I see.
Time limit.
Okay, very cool. Well,
it was good to speak to you. Yeah,
you as well. Honestly, when I first heard of the movie, people have been listening to the show for a long time. I was like, the Greasy Strangler. It just sounds like something I'm gonna love, and I just figured I'd be let down, but From name to movie, I was not let down. It lived up to the expectations of the name Greasy Strangler.
Good. There we go.
Yes. Excellent.
Good. I'm glad about that. Not everybody would agree with you.
No, they don't. But much like you, I don't really care. But
exactly.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah.
Okay, mate.
Oink, oink. This is Joe David Walters, Oinker from the Greasy Strangler, and you're listening to Without Your Head.